In this life, the only person you're truly competing with is the one in the mirror, and if everything you've survived hasn't already proven your worth, nothing ever will. Now imagine reaching your 80s or even your 90s and still out working, out thinking, and outshining people young enough to call you grandpa. That's exactly what these 15 black legends are doing. Morgan Freeman didn't just age, he evolved. At 81, he became a beekeeper and turned part of his land into a sanctuary for endangered bees. Meanwhile, Charles S. Dutton, he's out on his own farm, shoveling manure like a man half his age, because strength is a mindset, not a number. And wait until you see who the oldest living football star turned minister is and the surprising daily habit that keeps his mind razor sharp. Let's start with the first one. Fred Williamson. Fred Williamson wasn't just born to break barriers, he was built for them. Born in 1938 in Gary, Indiana, most people know him as the Hammer, the hard-hitting defensive back, and the smooth, unstoppable force of 1970s black action cinema. But the real story goes deeper than football stats and movie posters. Before he ever stepped onto a pro field, Fred earned an architecture degree from Northwestern University, a move that showed he wasn't just muscle, he was strategy, structure, and vision. That same mindset would later drive him to create his own production company, Po' Boy Productions, in 1974. He didn't do it for fame. He did it for freedom, to give black actors and filmmakers ownership, dignity, and power in an industry that rarely offered any. On the field, Fred played for the Steelers, Raiders, and Chiefs, becoming a three-time AFL All-Star and a 1966 champion. But even after football, he didn't cling to the past or turn into a gym-obsessed ex-athlete. Instead, he mastered movement, not just workouts. Real-life motion, directing, acting, traveling, planning scenes, staying on his feet, staying sharp. Then came the era that etched him into film history. In movies like Black Caesar and The Legend of Charlie, Fred didn't just play the hero, he redefined him. Quentin Tarantino once said that Charlie was one of the first films to show a slave who fought back. That wasn't just cinema, that was cultural rebellion on a screen that once demanded silence. Fred wasn't waiting for Hollywood to give him a lane. He built his own road. And now, at 87, he still looks rugged, strong, and present. Not because he's chasing youth, but because he honors motion, purpose, and discipline. No obsession with weights, no obsession with age, just a lifetime of staying in motion, mentally and physically. Fred Williamson didn't just survive the system. He outthought it, outworked it, and outlasted it. Glynn Turman isn't just a Hollywood veteran. He's a living blueprint for what it means to grow, evolve, and stay unstoppable for more than 60 years. Most people know him for his cool, commanding screen presence, the sharp-witted Colonel Taylor on A Different World, the ruthless Mayor Royce in The Wire, or the grieving father in Women of the Movement. But that's only the surface of a man whose life is packed with stories most fans have never heard. Born in New York City in 1947, Glynn stepped into the spotlight at just 12 years old, starring in the original Broadway production of A Raisin in the Sun, acting shoulder to shoulder with legends like Sidney Poitier and Ruby Dee. That kind of debut doesn't just launch a career, it sets a tone. This kid belongs on the stage. But what really makes Glynn extraordinary is that he never settled for being just an actor. He became a creator, a storyteller, a builder. He directed episodes of The Parenthood, Hangin' with Mr. Cooper, and A Different World. He wrote, he produced, he shaped characters and narratives from both sides of the camera, not because he had to, but because he was too curious and too driven to sit still in one lane. And then there sets the part of Glynn Sitt's life that almost no one expects. He suts a real-life cowboy. Not movie cowboy, not stunt double cowboy. Rodeo riding, horse training, land working cowboy. Turman owns a ranch north of Los Angeles, where he raises horses, mends fences, rides through open hills, and finds peace in the rhythm of nature. After emotionally heavy roles, like portraying Mo Wright in Women of the Movement, the story of Emmett Till, that open space is where he detoxes his soul. He once said the saddle is his therapy chair. In July 2025, when he received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, he didn't just walk up and smile for the cameras. He rode in on horseback, 78 years old, in a cowboy hat, controlling a full-size horse in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard. That's not a stunt. That's a statement: I am who I am, and I'm still moving forward. His fitness routine? No treadmill, no fitness influencer nonsense. He stays strong by living, feeding horses, lifting hay bales, jumping on and off tractors, working the land. When he feels playful, he'll drop for a few push-ups, just to prove the body still listens when the mind says, let's go. And just when you think you've figured him out, you learn he's added music to the list. A piano sat untouched in his home for years, until he accepted a stage role that required him to play. Instead of faking it, he went and learned from jazz legends Billy Mitchell and Burford Marsalis. Today he travels with a small keyboard just to keep the creativity flowing. That sets Glyn Turman in a sentence: always working, always learning, always writing, always living. Still acting in new films like Paradise 2025. Still appearing in hits like Queen Sugar and How to Get Away with Murder. Still directing, still making music, still laughing, still curious. And most importantly, still refusing to slow down, because adventure doesn't have an age limit when your spirit stays in motion. Morgan Freeman is the kind of legend who didn't just age, he evolved. That voice everyone recognizes, calm, rich, unshakable, didn't belong to a man who rushed into fame. It belonged to someone who grew into it. Before he was the wise mentor, the quiet revolutionary, the man who could narrate the history of the universe and make you believe every word, Morgan was just a kid from Mississippi who took the long road. He wasn't a Hollywood prodigy. In fact, he didn't land his most iconic roles until his 50s, driving Miss Daisy, Glory, Seven, The Shawshank Redemption. Those weren't early blessings, they were decades of work finally blooming. But before the screen ever found him, the sky called first. He joined the U.S. Air Force, dreaming of becoming a fighter pilot. Instead, he became a radar technician, close enough to touch the cockpit, far enough to know life had other plans. Still, that discipline, that quiet confidence, never left him. Success didn't change him. Fame didn't inflate him. While others chased red carpets, Morgan went home, back to Mississippi, where he owns a ranch, grows his own food, and literally rescues bees. At 81, he turned 124 acres of land into a honeybee sanctuary, not for profit, but to help save a dying species. And life didn't spare him pain. In 2008, a devastating car crash nearly ended everything. He broke bones, suffered nerve damage, and was left with chronic pain and permanent loss of mobility in his left hand. That's why he often wears a black compression glove, not for style but for survival. Yet still, he didn't slow down. He acted, he narrated, he traveled, he lived. At 65, when most people think of slowing down, Morgan finally learned to fly a plane, a dream teenage Freeman never got to fulfill in the Air Force. Blues lover, club owner, pilot, philanthropist, environmentalist, a man who speaks softly but moves like purpose itself. Today, at 88, Morgan Freeman is more than an actor. He's living proof that it's never too late to dream, to begin, to rebuild, to rise. Some people burn out. Morgan Freeman kept burning steady, and the world is still standing in the glow. 4. Charles S. Dutton. Charles S. Dutton isn't the kind of man Hollywood usually produces. He's the kind of man life forges. Born in 1951 in the tough streets of Baltimore, he wasn't raised for fame, opportunity, or applause. He left school at 12, got swept into street life, and by his late teens, he was behind bars, first for manslaughter, then again for weapons possession. Most people would have disappeared into the prison system. But Charles didn't just survive it, he rewrote his destiny inside it. One request changed everything. He asked the warden if he could start a drama group. No fame, no audience, just inmates, scripts, and a stage made of concrete floors. That tiny prison theater became his doorway into a future he never imagined. When he got out, he didn't just act, he studied the craft, earning a drama degree from Towson State and then a master's from the legendary Yale School of Drama. From the Yard to Yale, from inmate to Emmy-nominated actor. That SEP's not a comeback, that SEP's a rebirth. And when you watch him in Rock Alien 3, The Corner, or Rudy, that fire in his eyes isn't acting, it's lived experience, sharpened and disciplined. But here's what most people never hear. Charles isn't just a powerhouse actor. He's a student of every challenge he faces. For his first Broadway role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, he had to learn the trumpet. 5 weeks of lessons. Critics assumed he'd been playing for years. Even he laughed later, saying he nearly passed out when Dizzy Gillespie showed up in the crowd. Off-screen, he lives a life as humble as his work is powerful. Today, in his 70s, he runs a small farm in Maryland. Goats, chickens, horses, vegetables, manure, the whole deal. No assistants, no glam, just sweat, soil, and sunlight. And when the crops are good, he donates crates of produce to churches and homeless shelters across the state. Because to Charles, success isn't about red carpets. It's about usefulness, about turning pain into purpose. He didn't just escape his past, he repurposed it. And every role he plays, every seed he plants, every life he touches, is proof that the final act of your story is never written by your mistakes, only by what you decide to do next. 5. Billy D. Williams. Billy D. Williams has always been the definition of smooth, the voice, the presence, the effortless cool. But behind the velvet tone and the iconic mustache is a story far richer, stranger, and more artistic than most people ever realize. Born in Harlem in 1937, Billy grew up in a world where creativity wasn't a luxury, it was oxygen. His mother was an opera singer, his father worked as an elevator operator, and by age 7, he had already stepped onto a Broadway stage in the Firebrand of Florence. He later admitted he found it boring at the time, but destiny had already tapped his shoulder. What people rarely talk about is that acting wasn't his first dream. Painting was. Billy earned a painting scholarship to the National Academy of Design, where he won the prestigious Hall Garden Prize in the mid-1950s, proving he could have become a respected painter even if he never touched a movie script. To buy paint and brushes, he took acting jobs. Acting was supposed to fund the art. But acting didn't just pay the bills, it claimed him. He trained with Sidney Poitier at the Harlem Actors Workshop, explored his inner world through LSD in the 1960s. To get inside myself, he said, and even did nude modeling for art students while learning life drawing. Billy wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing expression in every form. Yet behind the charm was a man who struggled. In his memoir, he admits that after a Broadway run suddenly ended, he spiraled into deep depression, even considering taking his own life when he felt his career slipping away. That confession alone shatters the myth of the always unshakable Billy D. And yes, he once got himself fired from a play by whispering a dirty joke to Leslie Uggams on stage during a live performance. He laughs about it now, saying James Baldwin thought it was legendary. But the world would come to know him as Lando Calrissian, the galaxy's most elegant scoundrel, the first black star in the Star Wars universe, and the man who could walk into any room or spaceship like it belonged to him. Today, at 88, Billy D. Williams is still a painter, still an actor, still stylish, still alive with curiosity. Not because he tried to stay young, but because he never stopped creating. 6. Rosie Grier. Rosie Grier isn't just a football legend, he's one of the most unexpected multi-dimensional men in American history, a 6'5", 285-pound wall of strength on the field, and yet one of the gentlest, most soulful spirits off of it. His life is the kind of story Hollywood could make, but never would because no one would believe it was all true. Born in 1932 in Georgia, Rosie became a force in the NFL, anchoring the defensive line for the New York Giants and the Los Angeles Rams as part of the iconic Fearsome Foursome. He played 11 seasons, won the 1956 NFL championship, and dominated the field with sheer power, but his real legacy didn't end with football. When most retired players were fading into the background, Rosie was stepping into history. In 1968, he worked as a bodyguard for Robert F. Kennedy during the presidential campaign. And when the gunshots rang out in the Ambassador Hotel, Rosie didn't panic. He acted. He shielded Ethel Kennedy, rushed the shooter, and tore the gun from his hand. No script, no hesitation, just courage. But Rosie Grier didn't stop at bravery. He became a Protestant minister. He founded a nonprofit to help inner-city youth with housing and job programs. He joined the board of the Milk and Family Foundation to support education and community healing. He spent his post-NFL life building people, not trophies. And then, the twist no one sees coming. Rosie Grier is a master of needlepoint, crochet, and macrame. In 1973, he even published Rosie Grier's Needlepoint for Men, proudly breaking every stereotype about masculinity, long before the world knew words like self-care or mental health. A giant of a man, sitting peacefully, stitching patterns. It's strangely beautiful and deeply him. Now 93 years old, the oldest living former NFL player in 2025, Rosie still moves with purpose, speaks with warmth, and proves that real strength isn't just physical. It's compassion, it's creativity, it's courage under fire, and calm with a needle in hand. 7. Hal Williams. Hal Williams is one of those actors you recognize instantly. The voice, the posture, the calm authority, even if you can't always place his name. He's been on our screens for decades, shaping characters with a quiet strength that sneaks up on you. But behind that familiar face is a life and career far deeper than most people ever hear about. Born in December 1938 in Columbus, Ohio, Hal didn't arrive in Hollywood through the usual fast-track route. Before sitcoms and cameras, he built himself on the stage, not chasing spotlight, but craft. He spent years in theater, studying timing, breath, body control, and presence. That stage discipline never left him, and it's exactly why he brings such calm power to every role he plays. Most audiences remember him as Officer Lester Jenkins on 227, or as the firm but funny sergeant on Sanford and Son and Silver Spoons. But Hal's range goes beyond sitcom laughs. He's stepped into drama, military roles, and straight-man characters with the same grounded energy. He doesn't perform calmness, he is calmness. Even when he delivers comedy, there's a quiet authority underneath, as if he's letting the audience laugh without ever losing command of the room. At 86, Hal Williams is still sharp, present, and in far better shape than people half his age. And the secret? No workout tapes, no trainers, no social media fitness boasts. His health routine is built into the way he lives. Decades of hitting marks on set, long hours standing under studio lights, memorizing scripts and staying mentally alert, simply showing up. On time, prepared, every day. No extremes, no trends, just consistency. Friends say Hal lives with balance, steady rest, moderate eating, a work rhythm that never pushed him into burnout. He doesn't chase youth, he respects routine. He stays active by walking, doing charity appearances, speaking at events, and living life without rushing. And maybe that sits the real lesson in Hal Williams' Sip's story. You don't need noise to make an impact. You don't need harder, louder, faster to stay strong. Sometimes the most powerful thing a man can master is steadiness. Hal didn't just act calm, he built a life around it. 8. Marla Gibbs. Marla Gibbs isn't just a sitcom legend, she's living proof that reinvention, resilience, and humor can stretch a career across 7 decades without losing an ounce of shine. Most people know her as Florence Johnston, the sharp-tongued maid on The Jeffersons, or as the no-nonsense Mary Jenkins on 227. But that version of Marla is only the tip of a much bigger, richer story. Born in Chicago in 1931, she didn't leap into acting the way Hollywood likes to pretend stars do. She worked regular jobs, including years as a reservations agent for United Airlines, while doing theater on the side. No fame, no spotlight, just a woman quietly sharpening her craft. She didn't go full-time into acting until her 40s. In a world obsessed with making it young, Marla proved the opposite. It's never too late when the talent is real. And she didn't stop at acting. She produced, she sang. She owned a jazz club in Los Angeles, Marla's Memory Lane Jazz and Supper Club, where legends performed, and she even released her own albums. She opened a theater academy to give others a chance to rise, even when it later struggled financially. She didn't quit, she pivoted. That's the pattern of her entire life. She creates, something falls apart, she builds again, stronger, wiser, funnier. Want another overlooked chapter? When 227 was being cast, she personally fought for a young Regina King to play her daughter. No Regina King, the Oscar-winning Regina King, without Marla speaking up. That's legacy. And now, at 94, she's still working, still being honored, still walking red carpets, still doing interviews, still popping up in shows like Days of Our Lives. Forget gym selfies. Her fitness is movement, purpose, and joy. You don't stay energetic at 94 by accident. In 2024, she stood in front of an audience at a public library in Wilmington and casually dropped 50 years of Hollywood wisdom like it was nothing. No bitterness, no bragging, just stories, laughter, gratitude, and a clear message. Keep going, keep showing up, keep laughing. Marla Gibbs didn't just survive Hollywood, she outlasted it, and did it with grace, hustle, and a punchline loaded and ready. Felicia Rashad has always carried herself with grace, intelligence, and quiet power, but the woman most people still call Claire Huxtable has lived a far bigger story than the one written for her on TV. At 76, she's not just an actress, not just a Broadway icon, not just the warm, elegant presence we grew up watching. She's a builder of artists, a mentor, and a woman who has stayed mentally and physically vibrant through intention, discipline, and purpose. One of the most overlooked chapters of her life happened off stage. In 2021, she became the dean of Howard University's College of Fine Arts, the very school where she once studied. For 3 years, she led, redesigned programs, and helped shape the next generation of Black creators. That wasn't a vanity title. It was work. Meetings, planning, mentorship, cultural stewardship. She wasn't practicing fame, she was passing the torch. And while many Hollywood stars chase youth, Felicia has chosen long-term wellness. She's been a vegetarian since the early 1990s, confirmed way back in a 1992 New York Times piece on plant-based eating. Decades before it was trendy, she was already eating for longevity, not image. That clean diet, paired with meditation, nature breaks, and a deep spiritual life, is part of why she still glows, not just on camera but in real life. People may also be shocked to learn she made history twice. She was the first Black woman to ever win a Tony Award for Best Actress in a play, first in 2004 for A Raisin in the Sun, then again in 2022 for Skeleton Crew, nearly 20 years apart. That's not just talent, that's endurance. And she doesn't only command the stage, she commands behind it. In 2014, she directed Fences at Seattle Repertory Theater. Directing isn't glamour, it's stamina, focus, creative leadership, long days, long nights, full responsibility. Today, her routine isn't set about PR or performance. It sets about alignment, mind, body, spirit, meditation, stillness, fresh air, creative work that feeds instead of drains. Felicia Rashad didn't stay relevant by chasing the spotlight. She stayed relevant by expanding beyond it. A legend not because she lasted, but because she kept evolving. 10. Garrett Morris. Garrett Morris isn't just a comedy veteran. He's one of the most quietly versatile storytellers in American entertainment. Most people only remember him as one of the original Saturday Night Live cast members, but his life before and after SNL is a whole story of artistry, rebellion, and endurance that rarely gets told. Born in 1937, Garrett didn't come from the world of punchlines. He came from the stage. Before he ever delivered a joke on live TV, he was performing in classic musicals like Showboat and Porgy and Bess, singing with real vocal power, and writing politically charged plays in New York. That alone makes him different from every other SNL original. He wasn't just funny, he was trained, disciplined, and deeply rooted in black theater. Then came Saturday Night Live. As one of the not ready for prime time players, Garrett brought a sharp, fearless edge to the show. His weekend update bits became legendary, and he delivered some of the boldest humor on television during a time when black comics barely had space to speak, let alone headline. But Garrett Morris didn't peak in the 70s, he just kept going. He moved into sitcoms like The Jeffersons, Martin, and later Two Broke Girls. He voiced characters in animation and video games. He did films, stage plays, radio, stand-up, every lane he found, he used. And now, at 88, he's still working, not retired, not frozen in nostalgia. No workout guru, no celebrity longevity secrets. Just a man who stayed active, stayed creative, and stayed present. That's his real health routine. He acts, he records, he meets fans, he lives. And that constant engagement, mental, vocal, physical, is why he still looks strong, alert, and sharp. Garrett Morris didn't just survive Hollywood. He evolved with it, from Broadway tenor to sketch legend to sitcom staple. And if you think his life is wild already, wait until you hear about the actor who got fired for whispering dirty jokes on stage during a live performance. Demond Wilson. Demond Wilson is one of those rare figures whose life didn't end with a hit sitcom. It transformed. Most people still see him as Lamont Sanford, the sharp but exasperated son from Sanford and Son, but that role is only one chapter in a life that has swung from showbiz fame to deep spiritual purpose. Born in 1946 in Georgia, Demond was a performer before he could even spell the word. He was on Broadway at age 4, dancing at the Apollo Theater by 12, and trained in ballet and tap, not exactly the background people imagine for a future sitcom star. That early discipline built a foundation of control, rhythm, and energy long before Hollywood ever called his name. But life hit him hard early. As a child, his appendix burst, nearly killing him. He promised God that if he survived, he would serve him one day. Years later, he kept that promise, but not before another life-altering chapter, Vietnam. Demond served in the U.S. Army's 4th Infantry Division, returned home wounded, and earned a Purple Heart. That experience, war, injury, survival, gave him a toughness you can still see in his eyes today. Then came 1972, Sanford and Son. Overnight, he became a household name. And when Red Fox famously walked off the show in 1974, Demond held the entire production together, a fact Hollywood rarely credits him for. He stayed until the series ended in 1977, but unlike many sitcom stars, he didn't cling to the limelight. In 1985, he walked away from mainstream acting, not out of scandal but conviction. He became a full-time Christian minister, writing books on faith, exposing New Age beliefs, and later releasing his memoir Second Banana in 2009, where he finally told his side of the Sanford story. Today at 78, Demond Wilson lives a life built on faith, family, writing, and ministry. Married since 1974 to model Cicely Johnston, father of 6, author of children's books and spiritual works, frequent guest on TBN, he is not retired. He is redeployed. No gym obsession. No Hollywood reinvention tour. His strength now comes from preaching, traveling, speaking, praying, and keeping the promise he made as a child on a hospital bed. Demond Wilson didn't just leave Hollywood. He outgrew it, and found a mission far bigger than fame. 12. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is one of the most recognizable figures in American entertainment, but behind the smooth sweaters and the sitcom dad persona lies a complicated, far less publicized story. Long before The Cosby Show turned him into America's dad, Cosby was grinding his way through the stand-up circuit, tiny clubs, late-night sets, and a slow climb into television. What many people don't realize is that he was doing something unusual for a rising comic. He kept going to school. He eventually earned a doctorate in education, and his PhD wasn't just a vanity title. His dissertation focused on how his animated series Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids could be used as a tool to teach children in real classrooms. Comedy and curriculum, it was a mix nobody expected. Cosby was also deeply rooted in jazz. He played drums and bass, spent years hosting the Playboy Jazz Festival, and quietly built one of the most significant private collections of African American art in the country, over 300 pieces. Part of that collection was even displayed at the Smithsonian, showing just how serious he was about preserving Black history and culture. But his story doesn't end in applause. Cosby's legacy took a dramatic turn when dozens of women came forward with sexual assault allegations. In 2018, he was convicted and sent to prison. In 2021, the conviction was overturned on procedural grounds, and he was released, not declared innocent, but freed because the court ruled his legal rights had been violated. Since then, he has lived largely out of public view. Now 87, legally blind, and no longer the cultural giant he once was, Cosby remains a figure discussed with equal parts nostalgia, anger, and complexity. His life is a story of groundbreaking success, cultural influence, and a fall that permanently reshaped his place in history. Some legacies inspire, some warn. Cosby's does both, and the world is still figuring out what to do with that truth. 13. Robert Hooks. Robert Hooks is one of those rare artists whose off-screen life is not only richer than his film roles, it's a blueprint for how one person can build culture, community, and legacy all at once. Born Bobby Dean Hooks in 1937, he didn't grow up in glamour or ease. His childhood was split between Washington, D.C. and the sharecropper fields of North Carolina, where he and his siblings worked to help pay for school. Before he ever learned stage directions, he learned real work, sweat, soil, responsibility. That grounding never left him. He got his first taste of acting at 9 years old in The Pirates of Penzance, and by his early 20s, he was on Broadway, starring in A Raisin in the Sun, then stepping into James Earl Jones's role in The Blacks. That kind of stage training didn't just make him a great actor, it gave him discipline, purpose, and a lifelong belief in the power of storytelling. But here sits where Robert Hooks becomes truly historic. He didn't just perform in the arts, he built institutions. In 1967, he co-founded the Negro Ensemble Company, NEC, in New York, the theater that launched the careers of Samuel L. Jackson, Denzel Washington, Felicia Rashad, and countless others. He later founded the D.C. Black Repertory Company, giving young black actors a home during the civil rights era when Hollywood and Broadway offered them almost nothing. And then, maybe the most incredible chapter, in 1971, Hooks launched the Intervision's Prison Arts program inside Lorton Prison. He brought poetry, theater, and performance into a maximum security environment. One inmate's performance was so powerful that President Gerald Ford commuted his sentence. Hooks didn't just believe art could change lives, he proved it. Even today, Robert isn't retired. He stays active by doing the work, producing plays, speaking at schools, consulting on projects, traveling, planning, mentoring, standing on stages big and small. No gym routine, no fitness influencer lifestyle. His exercise is purpose, and purpose keeps a man moving. Robert Hooks didn't wait for Hollywood to make room for black artists. He built the room, then opened the door for everyone else. A legacy not of fame, but of foundation. Thanks for watching. Now it's your turn. Tell us in the comments which legend inspired you the most. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started. More unbelievable celebrity stories, hidden truths, and iconic tales are on the way. Don't miss the next one. Turn on the notification bell and stay tuned.